Good morning to you. I'm going to read a few scriptures to you today, and there's a point I'm going to make, which I think I'll leave you hanging. Let's wait. The first one is Hebrews 10:23. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. Hold fast the confession of your hope. Hebrews 10:35 says, therefore do not cast away your confidence, which has great reward. Confidence in God has great rewards. Holding on to the confession, what we say, what we hope, without wavering, is also rewarded with the faithfulness of God, seeing the faithfulness of God. Do not cast away your confidence means this: continuance in a state of grace. In other words, when you put your hope in God, when you do not cast away your confidence, you are empowered to continue or endure in a state of grace. Isn't that amazing? A state of grace. The grace of God that empowers you, the divine enablement to keep you and strengthen you and help you to persevere and endure. So now I want to take you to John chapter 6, and it's the story of the feeding of the 5,000. It says in verse 2 here, a great multitude followed him because they saw his signs which he performed on those who were diseased. Isn't that amazing? Just think about it. The reason they followed Jesus was because of the signs that they saw. Jesus went up on the mountain, sat with his disciples, and then in verse 5, Jesus lifted up his eyes, and seeing a great multitude coming toward him, he said to Philip, where shall we buy bread that these may eat? I mean, what a question. It says in verse 6, this he said to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. Jesus already had the end of the picture. But he said this to Philip to see what is Philip going to do. Now remember, Philip was one of the disciples who had already followed Jesus for a while, and they had seen the miracles. They had seen the signs which he performed on those who were diseased. That's mentioned in verse 2. But when it came time to this miracle of feeding 5,000 people, Philip had no idea. And then Philip says, 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may have a little. And then Andrew said, there's a lad here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish, but what are they among so many? And then Jesus said, make the people sit down. To me, it's when we see Jesus do things, when we hear him promise us something, we read these stories in the Bible, every time we read it, there's an invitation here to be involved in the life of the kingdom, in the way God does things. What was happening here with the feeding of the 5,000 with Jesus was, he was inviting them into his way of life. This is the grace of God. The fact that you and I, we are holding fast our confession one day and then the next day we don't. We waver. We all do at some point. But then God in his grace still comes through and encourages us some more. Then sometimes we cast away our confidence and we say, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I don't know. Maybe we are like Philip. There are too many people here and there's this amount of money. It's not enough to feed everybody. Or Andrew saying, there's a little boy here who's got 5 loaves and 2 fish, but what is this going to, what difference will this make? Here's the great thing. Even though Philip and Andrew were looking at it from the natural, Jesus stepped in and he said, make the people sit down. There was much grass in the place, so the men sat down in number about 5,000. Jesus took the loaves. When he had given thanks, he distributed them to the disciples, and the disciples to those sitting down, and likewise of the fish as much as they wanted. So when they were filled, he said to his disciples, gather up the fragments that remain, so that nothing is lost. Now you know the story. In another gospel, it says Jesus took the bread, and when he broke it, he gave thanks. It says it here in the book of John. But then he said to the disciples, you take it. He called them and he handed them the basket, and he said, you take it. You, to the 5,000 people. Now remember, it started out as 5 loaves and 2 fish. And Jesus prayed over it. And then he didn't say, Jesus himself didn't say, it's okay, I'll hand it out. He prayed for the miracle, and then he invited the disciples to come in and take the miracle out with them. And as they took the little bit that they had and they began to hand it out, it would have multiplied in their hands. They would have been seen firsthand, this miracle that was taking place. So this was Jesus, who could have just done this and bread could have come down from heaven. But he prayed and he put it in the hands of his disciples. Now, I believe that you and I, when God gives us a promise, he is inviting us into his way of life, which is a miraculous way of life, a life of breakthrough, a life of seeing things multiplied, a life of deliverance and protection and restoration and healing and whatever is in our inheritance as a believer. And so sometimes we forget that he's the God of the miraculous. And so then it's easy for us to stop saying what we hope God is going to do. I'm not even talking about faith, because Hebrews 10:23 says, hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering. And then we cast away our confidence, forgetting that there's a great reward when we put our confidence in God, because we're going to see his faithfulness when our confidence is in him and not in ourselves. The disciples couldn't do anything with 5 loaves and 2 fish, but just putting it in the hands of Jesus caused a miracle. Now, I want to say this to you. If you feel as if you've lost your hope, you can't say the right things anymore because you've given up hope, you don't have confidence anymore in yourself, in your prayers, but you can put your confidence back in God, that God can do anything. Put it into his hands. He's the miracle working God. So that's my encouragement for you today. Hold fast the confession of your hope. Every time the enemy says nothing's going to happen, you say, no, this is what God said. If he's able to multiply 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish and feed 5,000 people, he can do anything for you. That's my encouragement for you today.